Election day is just a couple days away. Peter Hubbard, you are running as a Democrat for the Public Service Commission. Appreciate you making the time to talk to us here on the Georgia Vote.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So let's start with this. To somebody who maybe isn't familiar with you, maybe isn't even familiar with the Public Service Commission, why should they vote for you?
Well, the Public Service Commission, first of all, let's share what that is. They are the agency that most people have never heard of, but has an incredible impact on your lives. They regulate how much you pay on your power bill, your gas bill, your landline, and they also regulate where that energy comes from, whether it's from coal or gas or from renewable energy resources like solar. And this is a very sunny state. So the reason why folks should vote for me, Peter Hubbard, is because I have been doing the work for 6 years as a clean energy advocate, going in front of the commission to make the case that we can lower folks' power bills and clean up our environment and invite new business to the state. Altogether, we don't have to compromise on any of that, and I would be the only person on that commission with any energy industry experience, of which I have 15.
Let's talk about that. You say, make the energy cleaner, lower the power bills, and keep Georgia a place that businesses want to come and invest. That sounds great. The question I think a lot of people would ask is, how do you do that?
Well, there's a number of things that we can do right off the get-go. One is that we need to take our thumb off the scale for fossil fuels and put that towards the low-cost and reliable resources like solar. Solar right now is only getting about 30% of the value, and that makes it a bad deal. But once we restore that value, then that will help to lower our power bills. And you have to look no further than the red state of Texas to see that that is happening right now. They are embracing solar, and it is lowering folks' power bills.
When you say take the thumb off the scale, whose thumb is it? What scale is it?
Well, the thumb is from the monopoly electric utility, who they are the one who prepares the long-term plan that decides how we generate our electricity, and that's proposed every 3 years. And then it's the Public Service Commission that reviews and approves or changes that plan. And in those 6 years of clean energy advocacy, I've seen how the monopoly utility tilts things in the favor of what is most lucrative to their bottom line, and that's building expensive fossil fuel power plants rather than embracing low-cost resources. So that's key. There are a few other things we can do. One is that we can make new customers that are coming to the state, data centers, who have deep pockets. They absolutely can help pay their fair share and bring clean energy resources to the table, and even have a modicum of flexibility, just a half percentage point of flexibility in terms of their load profile, and we can use the grid that we already have without building new resources. And then the third thing we can do is adjust the profitability metric around Georgia Power, which is far above the industry standard. Just adjusting that to where every other electric utility in a competitive market environment would be, that would save us at least $700 million last year in 2024 on the profit of $2.5 billion. So there's a lot of things we can do.
Just to be clear, when you talk about lowering the profitability metric for Georgia Power, in brass tacks terms, what that would look like is charging them more.
It would look like them not collecting as much on our power bills is what that would look like. So they're authorized to receive an 11.9% return on equity, and if they go over that, they get to keep 60% of any overage. And that near 12% is on even cost overruns for the most expensive power plant in the world, Vogtle Units 3 and 4. So just adjusting that down to 9 and 9.5%, where the rest of the market is, that would free up a lot of resources and lower power bills immediately.
You brought up data centers. Let's talk about that for a moment, because we get a lot of questions about data centers. I bet you do too, particularly now that you're campaigning across the state. There are big-time proponents of data centers coming to Georgia. There are also people, local communities, that have real concerns about the impacts of these data centers. In particular, how they may impact people's power bills. Can you promise that if you are elected to the Public Service Commission, data centers will not cause people's power bills to rise?
What I can promise is that I will scrutinize what they're paying and look at the cost causation mechanisms and whether or not those costs are being allocated to those who are causing them, or if they're being shifted onto the backs of folks like you and me who pay a residential power bill. Over the last 15 years, we've only seen about 100 megawatts of new growth every year. Just last week, the commission asked for 9,900 megawatts of new generation. That's on a system of 16,500. So it's an enormous new amount of generation they're asking for. It's almost exclusively caused by data centers. And so really what we should be doing is putting that new spending into its own bucket and then shifting those costs, making sure those costs are allocated to those who are causing them. So that's what I can promise, is that fair treatment and judgment of who is causing the costs. And you know, they can be our allies, data centers. In fact, if they pay their fair shares, again, then we're spreading, there's a number of fixed costs on the system, and if we have more customers paying into it, then that can lower the overall cost of energy for everyone, but that's not the case right now.
So paying their fair share can be kind of a fuzzy term, because different people have a different idea of what may be fair depending on where they sit. From where you sit, what would a fair share look like for these data centers to pay?
Well, right now the data centers, if you're a large load customer, 100 megawatts or larger, then you pay 4.2 cents per kilowatt hour. If you're a residential Georgia Power Company customer in the summertime, you pay 21 cents a kilowatt hour. It's a five-fold difference.
It's much cheaper for these data centers than for the average Georgia Power customer.
It is. Now, it should not be exactly the same. There's three parts to the grid: the generation, the transmission, and the distribution. We all pay the G&T side. The distribution side, that's just for residential customers. It's the wires and poles in the neighborhood. That can be a large component of your bill, but it's certainly not a five-fold difference. So when I say they should pay their fair share, it's on the infrastructure we already have and the amount they're paying for their energy right now. I'm also very concerned about the additional infrastructure that's being authorized as we speak right now. It's north of $21 billion of new spending that was requested at the commission just last week. And so if you think that the increase in power bills is over with this Republican commission, then I'm afraid that you're mistaken. There's more that's coming down the pike unless we get someone like myself and Dr. Johnson on the commission.
Let's talk about solar. You brought that up right away, and I know it's been a big focus of yours. I want to read you something that you said recently in an interview with The Current, which is a coastal Georgia publication. You said, and this is a quote, "I would very much like to see 100% renewable energy grid, but I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good." You went on to say, let's try and get to 60, 70, 80% clean energy. Can Georgia handle and create enough power for all the customers in Georgia with a system that is 60, 70, 80% renewable?
Sure, absolutely. And we only have to look at other power grids around the world that are doing that already. So it's not just me saying this. This is being put into practice in grids around the world.
Are there any American grids that do that at that level of renewables?
Texas, the Southwestern Power Pool market, SPP, it's heavily dependent on wind, and they're increasing their amount of solar there. There are times when those grids operate on 100% solar, 100% renewables, excuse me. So Texas, of all places, is embracing clean energy resources. Why? Because it is the lowest cost resource that's out there. Once you build a solar power plant, then the fuel is free. It's delivered without a pipeline directly to that power plant from above. And that's the reason why it's such a low cost resource. So yes, and there's no compromise on reliability once again. Yes, we can embrace all of those things that I mentioned at the top of this interview in terms of new business, lowering power bills, and having reliability.
You said renewables are low-cost energy. You said once you've built the plant, once you've built the infrastructure, if you're talking about solar, that energy is coming out from the sun. It's going right into the power plant, right into the grid. But you do have to build all that infrastructure. To take Georgia to a level where its power grid is, let's say, 60%, the low end of your kind of framework, 60% renewable energy. How much would it cost to develop the infrastructure to get Georgia to that level?
That's a good question. I don't have the number at the top of my head, but what I can say is that here in Georgia, we have the largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere in Dalton and Cartersville. We're also manufacturing batteries for electric vehicles, and we have one and soon to be two electric vehicle manufacturing facilities. We're building the clean energy economy right here in Georgia. We should be putting those resources to work, which will also help to put the people of Georgia to work as well. So this is a win-win-win, and it's amazing to me that the current Republican commissioners don't understand that and aren't embracing that and doing what's right for Georgia.
I want to ask about your background in a moment, but I do want to dwell here, if you'll permit me, for just one moment more particularly because I know you've been critical of the cost of Plant Vogel's expansions in recent years, which is a multi-billion-dollar project. If you're elected, if Democrats then down the line get a majority on the PSC and you're able to pursue this renewable plan, I know you don't have figures right in front of you, but if you had to estimate, would it be millions of dollars, billions of dollars to carry out this renewable plan?
It'd be billions, absolutely. But again, just last week, they were asking for north of $21 billion for 3 new fossil gas combined cycle power plants and a host of company-owned proposals. Those company-owned proposals happen to be battery energy storage systems, which I am in favor of. I'm suspicious of why they're all company-owned proposals. I don't understand that. But it will cost money. But again, it's an investment that will lower the cost of our power bills and will put the people of Georgia to work. So yes, it will have a cost, everything does, but certainly not as expensive as the most expensive power plant in the world. And to be clear, I'm grateful for the clean energy, the carbon-free emissions that come from Plant Vogel. It's a very expensive, high capex, low opex plant. So once it's built, then it's also low cost to operate. So it has some benefit. It pushed off a lot of the coal and the gas off the dispatch stack. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the jobs it created and is continuing to create. I'm just very deeply skeptical of the costs and how those were shifted onto folks like you and me.
Let me ask you a question, and let me give you a chance to respond to something that a Republican incumbent said about you and I don't want to say your running mate, but Alicia Johnson, who's the other Democratic challenger. And in a way, you guys have, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in a way, you're kind of a ticket right now. Tim Echols, the Republican incumbent, said that if you and Ms. Johnson are elected, you will be at war with fossil plants. Do you dispute that? Do you take issue with that? How do you respond to that?
So here's what I would say to that, is that right now the cost of those fossil fuel plants are being severely underestimated. There's a cost to the coal cleanup and the coal piles, the coal ash piles that we have around the state. We're not accounting for the public health impacts of those fossil fuel plants. We're not accounting for the climate change impacts of those. So once those true costs are accounted for, we would be seeing a lot less of them. Not to mention that a number of affiliate companies, the Georgia Power Company, are profiting on the transportation of those fossil fuels, on the marketing and resale of that fossil gas. I began my career 15 years ago in the energy industry, surprisingly with an oil and gas course that taught me that we're heavily dependent on the current infrastructure, and if I want to understand how to transition rapidly and responsibly, then I need to understand the system that we have. And there is a place for a very modest amount of dispatchable generation that currently comes from fossil gas, from fossil coal. So there is some room for that, but it's percentage points. It's a small amount, and we can do it as well by having that dispatchable generation, but doing things like producing green hydrogen. We can use our excess solar to create the fuel for that dispatchable generation. So it's just inaccurate for Tim Echols to say that. What I'd like is to see the true costs of that generation be accounted for, and right now it's not.
Let's talk about your background. What experience do you have in the energy regulatory area that makes you think you're qualified for the PSC?
Well, when I worked at Siemens Energy Business Advisory, my role was to run the models, the electricity models, the very same model that Georgia Power Company uses to come up with its long-term integrated resource plan. And that's how I know that the thumb is on the scale for the resources that are more lucrative to them. So I've run that model. I've produced long-term power plans for utilities around the country. And that's an incredibly important role that the Public Service Commission plays. I took that knowledge, formed the nonprofit 6 years ago, and then began intervening before the Public Service Commission for 4 power plants now. And in fact, in this last power plan, I even used a little bit of that data center compute power to come up with an alternative integrated resource plan that demonstrates that we can accommodate this new load growth from data centers, new people moving to the state, and lower power bills and do it with clean energy. So right there off the bat, I have that direct experience in what the Public Service Commission directly oversees. But not only that, in the last 3 years, I have very intentionally transitioned to work with a company that brings clean energy resources to the market. Not in Georgia, I don't work in Georgia, but I work in Texas, Louisiana, Illinois, Michigan, places like that. And I did that because I want to understand what makes a clean energy project successful or why it fails. And so I have that direct experience arguing for permits in front of commissions, or the interconnection engineering process, or speaking with landowners about how clean energy can benefit them. I have all the experience that's needed for this Public Service Commission, and I would just remind your viewers that none of the 5 commissioners we have now have really any energy industry experience whatsoever, so I would be the first on that commission.
You have also been a fairly frequent guest and speaker at Public Service Commission meetings. You said something on your campaign website. It said, referring to you, this is a quote off your site, "He has been fighting tirelessly against the current PSC commissioners." That's a pretty forceful term, and I think somebody who maybe doesn't pay attention to the Public Service Commission might think, boy, that's a pretty strong statement for a body that regulates power. You know, how intense, how partisan could it get? Why choose those words? Why are you fighting tirelessly?
Well, I began my advocacy before the commission 6 years ago with the 2019 Integrated Resource Plan, and that was one where I had 5 gentle suggestions on how we could do better with this power plan. It fell on deaf ears. I said, thank you very much, and shuffled me along. I came back 3 years later in 2022 with more pointed criticisms, again that fell on deaf ears, and the reason why I use that term is because they are simply not listening to us, and they are in the pocket of the monopoly electric utility, and they're not serving the public interest. And so,
in the pocket. Tell me more about that. Why do you say that?
Because they're receiving donations from the people and the companies that they are meant to regulate who have business in front of them. So I'm talking about Gas South, Atlanta Gas Light, affiliates and ex-officials of the monopoly electric utility. Fitz Johnson, who I'm running against, has accepted hundreds or tens of thousands of dollars, the 5 of them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Fitz Johnson, 87% of his contributions come from companies that he's meant to regulate with business in front of the commission. That's what I mean by they're in the pocket.
And just to be clear for our viewers, you're talking about donations to campaign accounts, correct?
Right, and mind you, there's been this delay in elections for years, so they've been collecting for years. Fitz Johnson, this is the first time he's ever faced the electorate, and he's had 5 years to line his coffers with those donations from the people and companies he's meant to regulate.
I want to ask you just a couple last questions here, and then give you a chance to make any closing points you'd like. We appreciate your time. I want to be respectful of it. I think it is not a stretch to say when most people think about the Public Service Commission, if they think about it much at all, it's when they open up a power bill. There have been, according to the AP, 6 rate increases in recent years. If you're elected to the PSC, what will you do to keep Georgia Power customers' bills down? What will you do to prevent those rate increases from continuing?
Well, let's talk about those 6 rate increases. 2 of those were for Plant Vogtle. That's a bell that's difficult to unring. One of those was because we're so heavily dependent on fossil gas that in 2022, when there was a global crisis, Russia attacked Ukraine, gas prices spiked 5 times, and we're still paying that off. And then the last 3 of those 6 rate increases were simply to maintain the profitability of Georgia Power, that very high, near 12%. So, right off the bat, I mentioned that we can adjust that profitability down to where the market average would be, around 9 or 9.5%. That can help to keep power bills lower for folks. And that's in the short term, but we have to think about the medium and long term, which is building those low-cost resources. Instead of locking ourselves into a future where we're building fossil gas plants that need to be paid off over 45 years, we don't have that time to wait. The climate crisis is here now. We see that with Hurricane Melissa. Hurricane Helene, that bill is going to come due early next year. So there's a whole host of solutions on the table. We just have to have the courage and the vision to implement them.
If you're elected, would you vote against any proposed rate increase?
Yeah, I think I would right now until there's an adjustment in that profitability metric. I see no reason why they should be making money hand over fist and for residential ratepayers to bear that cost, especially when we're not causing the increase in those costs. These are deep-pocketed new customers that are coming to the state, and they have their own clean energy goals. I want to work with them to bring these new businesses to the state, but they do need to, and I should say and they need to pay their fair share as well. So again, there's no compromise here. We can lower folks' energy costs and embrace new energy resources, new clean energy resources, and the new businesses and folks that want to move to the state.
Let's end here. To somebody who maybe doesn't know you, to somebody who's still making up their mind about who to vote for in this race, your elevator pitch to a potential voter would be what?
Well, I'd be the only energy expert, Peter Hubbard, I'd be the only energy expert on that commission who understands how to put together a power plan, how to drive down the costs for folks. I think you can also rely on the fact that I've been doing this as a volunteer. No one has paid me over these past 6 years to bring the clean energy expert witness testimony that I've provided over these last 6 years. It's because I know it's the right thing to do for Georgians. I know that it will lower costs for folks, and it's really because we have to do something about the climate crisis. We have to do something about the affordability crisis, and I'm in this race because I have something to contribute, and I see that this is where I can best use my God-given talents, and so that's why I'm here, is to do the work for the people. It's right there in the name, the Public Service Commission, and that's what I intend to do, is serve the public.
I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Peter Hubbard, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.